I was thinking about opening day, and I was thinking about what opening days kind of stick in my mind. And growing up a Yankee fan, which I obviously have been my whole life, um, now I'm always someone who's paid attention to everything in baseball and to the Mets. But I mean, but I've always been a Yankee fan. Um, the opening day that sticks in my mind is an odd opening day, a really strange one for a couple of reasons. One, it was a bittersweet opening day because Mantle had just retired, just days before. Number two, the year wound up belonging to another team that became legendary in the same town. Of course, talking about the '69 Miracle Mets. This year belonged to them. And the Yankees, though, were turning the corner. No Mickey. Okay? The great Yankees that I had grown up with, Mickey and Whitey and Yogi and Elston Howard, Clete Boyer, Bobby Richardson, Tony Kubek, okay, Hector Lopez, Tom Tresh. Most of them were gone. A couple of them were still there. Pepe was still there, and he was in the lineup at first base. Tresh was in the lineup at shortstop. Mercer was back, and he was in the lineup, batting third. As a matter of fact, it was Horace Clark leading off. This was still the Horace Clark era, and you know that if you're a Yankee fan, the days that are not memorable, that bridge the gap from the Yankees of the Mantle years, the amazing Mantle years, 12 World Series in his first 14 years in the majors, to the '70s Yankees that played the Dodgers and won three pennants in a row, and Billy and Reggie and Gossage, etc., and Thurman. The in between years, a lot of times they're referred to as the Horace Clark years. That's not unfair to Horace Clark. It's kind of unfair to Horace Clark, but he was kind of ordinary at best. Horace Clark led off and batted second, as he did for almost a decade. Believe it or not, who was in center field? Jerry Kenny. Bobby Mercer was at third base, batting third. Roy White was in left, and he was a staple, and a very good player. Joe Pepitone was still there. He was about to leave, but he was still there at first base. Tom Tresh was at shortstop. This was about the end for him. Bill Robinson, if you remember the saga of Bill Robinson, in the International League, there were three big-time prospects in the International League the year before. One was on the field against the Yankees and Bill Robinson that day. His name was Mike Epstein. He was known as the Super Jew. That was his nickname. And he was a flamboyant player, and people thought he was going to be a great. The other was Reggie Smith, who went on to a great career, starting with the Red Sox. So there were three top players. The Yankees traded Clete Boyer to the Braves for Bill Robinson. Bill Robinson was going to replace Mickey Mantle. He started in right field that day. He never became a big hitter for the Yankees. When he went back to the National League years later, he became a very good hitter for the Phillies and the Pirates. But he was never the player that they thought he would be. We know we went through the long litany of guys until Mercer became a star in center field, which he did after going from third base to right field to center field, and then later back to right field in the days of Elliott Maddox. But when he started in center field and became an all-star and a really big fan favorite, which he would very soon, the next year, as a matter of fact. Later this year and then the next year, he became a star. But we went through all the great guys who were going to be the next Mantle. We went through Bill Robinson. We went through Roger Repose. We went through Mike Hegan. We went through Steve Whitaker. We went through a ton of guys who were going to all be the next Mantle. And Bill Robinson was going to be one of those guys. Traded for Clete Boyer. He was in the lineup that day. Jake Gibbs was a catcher. The Ole Miss quarterback, backup catcher. Remember Jake Gibbs? He was the catcher. And then the pitcher was a guy who was a great Yankee, who was just born, like Don Mattingly was, born in the wrong era. And that was Mel Stottlemyre. Mel Stottlemyre was a great player. If Mel Stottlemyre had been on a Yankee, if he had been born in another Yankee era, he would have been a Hall of Famer. Hands down. The man pitched brilliantly on bad teams forever. His first year in the majors, he came up and led the Yankees to the World Series and pitched well in the World Series as a rookie and went 9-3 down the stretch. Wonderful player. Had 40 career shutouts. The guy was a great player. Great athlete, great player. Could hit, could field. He was a wonderful player. He was the starting pitcher that day. Camilo Pascual was the starting pitcher for the Washington Senators. And the Yankees won that day 8-4. They beat Pascual. Kenny and Mercer hit back-to-back home runs in the third inning. Frank Howard hit a long home run late in the game for the Senators. And the Yankees won on opening day. And I remember it was, here are the new Yankees. Jerry Kenny, who the Yankees thought big things of at the time. Bobby Mercer, who the Yankees thought big things of at the time. And, and the Yankees went 500 that year. They went 80 and 81. And obviously they were completely eclipsed. This was the first year without Mantle. It was going to take Mercer a year to get his feet under him. Soon a catcher would be coming very soon, who was a big prospect, who the Yanks had high hopes for, who had a strange name by the name of Thurman Munson. He was right around the corner. He was days and weeks away. So this was a year in transition, a huge year in transition. From where the year started to where it ended, where the Yankees went right after that. It wouldn't be long till Blumberg was there. It wouldn't be long till Nettles was there. It wouldn't be long till Chambliss was there. Gabe Paul making those great trades with the Indians that changed the Yankees. It wouldn't be long till George was there. It wouldn't be long till they would make the trade Mercer for Bonds, which would be then turned into the trades that brought Mickey Rivers and Ed Figueroa, brought Willie Randolph for Doc Medich, the great trades where they fleeced the Indians for guys like Chambliss and Nettles and Tidrow and guys like that. So it was it's funny. You couldn't have had a year where the Yankees were more meaningless. They no longer had the drawing card, the iconic Mantle, the most popular player of his generation, maybe the most popular player of all time, or at least one of the handful of most popular players of all time, had just retired. Just days before, March 1st, 1969. On June 8th, he would have that classic Mickey Mantle Day, retire his uniform, the whole thing. That was June 8th, 1969. So you had this transition year. And no one would realize that later that season, I remember with the Yankees out of it, going to a couple of Met games and buying tickets, going to a giant Met game in 1969 that turned out to be the classic 1-0 14-inning game that I've mentioned many times on the radio. And going downstairs to the advanced ticket window during the game and buying my brother, Marty, tickets for the Cardinals, who he loved the Cardinals because they had traded. He was a Yankee fan who they traded for Roger Maris to the Cardinals, so he got mad that they traded Maris, who was his favorite player. I was a Mantle guy growing up, so he became a Maris guy. He rooted for Maris all the time. Maris got traded to the Cardinals, and when Maris retired, he became a Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, Joe Torre Cardinal fan, and was a Cardinal fan for the rest of his life. So I bought him tickets to go to the game, and the game turned out to be September 24th, 1969, the night the Mets clinched the pennant. And they tear the place apart. So how ironic is that? that I wind up going to the 16-inning game. I mean, the 14-inning game against the Giants that night. And I was not rooting for Willie Mays to hit his 600. At that time, he had 598. I was rooting against him because I couldn't stand Willie Mays because I was a Mantle guy. I never rooted for Willie Mays, ever. So, but he was going for his 600th home run at the time. And we have that classic game. The Mets were just about to take off. They were playing much better. And little did I know that I would buy those tickets for the 24th of September. And we went to the game that night. Matter of fact, our aunt drove us, and we couldn't even get to the field. Like, we had to park on the road somewhere and run to get into the stadium. That's how crazy it was. It was jammed. And went to the game that night where they clinched the pennant. I never went to any other game that year. I never had tickets to any of the Met playoff games, or I watched them on TV like everybody else, listened to them on the radio, the whole thing, as they went to the World Series and won it, but I never went to any of those games. First World Series game I ever got to go to was, I had 2 tickets, and I took Marty to the game. 1976, games 3 and 4 against the Reds. Freezing cold, and never was I more frustrated as a Yankee fan in my life than what those Reds did to the Yankees in those 2 games. I went to both games. With Marty, we went to both games. Sat upstairs, first base, in the upper deck, right at first base. And those were the first 2 World Series games I ever went to. Obviously, been to a few others since. Seen a few championships, seen a whole bunch of great things, but those were the first ones I ever got to go to. You know, I watched plenty of them through the years, but that was it. So I was at the Kansas City Shambles game, the Littell game, but I was never. That was my first World Series game. So I still remember that opener. For some reason, that opener sticks in my head. I mean, I can remember a couple of the openers, a couple of wild ones where it snowed, the one where they threw Reggie, candy bars at Reggie. I could think of some bizarre ones, but that one stuck in my head, and one that probably no one would ever think about, because there couldn't have been a more nondescript team. They were in between eras. The Mets were going to steal the town and steal America's hearts and the world's hearts, later that year. But that's the one that I think about. And today, obviously, would have been, and it is for you guys always, and for all of you out there, always a very special day, because it means so many things. It means that we're all looking forward to the warm weather. We're all looking forward to the summer. We're all looking forward to the hope and just the good feeling that opening day brings. Everything's positive on opening day. There's a sense of renewal on opening day. And right now we could use that